Bryce is here. Maddie, how you doing, buddy?
I'm loving life, man. It's Tuesday. We got an awesome project to talk about. The weather is amazing, so I got to do some reading outside. It's been great, man.
Yeah, fantastic.
Uh,
It's in San Diego. It is, as usual, 70 degrees and sunny with no humidity, so heaven on earth.
yeah, you're used to it. You're used to it.
I'm so freaking excited. Quick note on Ash. Ash is out this week, but he will be back on Sunday for his quick market update. Oh,
Yeah. Hey,
geez.
Mike, you gotta your mic is way down, so I
It's
think they can
way
hear me,
down?
but they can
Oh,
barely hear you.
come on, man. Come on, man.
Yeah, I gotta hear your voice, man. Everybody needs to hear you.
Oh,
What do people do?
yeah, I don't know why it's way down. Hold on, let me check.
But while you're doing
Let
that,
me
who do we
check.
got in here? We got Anthony, or as Mike would say,
How's it
Anthony's.
going? Hmm,
Uh,
that's
we got
really weird.
Yolanda, Meta Sculptor, Two Deeps in the house,
Oh,
Spazoinks, Buzz Monkey.
you know what? I'm just gonna switch over to my headset, buddy.
Do it,
Let me
do
do
it.
it.
Mike switching over to the headset. Back up. Plan B. We're gonna be okay here. They have a thin candy shell. Surprised you guys didn't know that. Uh, 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 Doing today?
How about that?
Everybody else have good days?
Oh shit, that's way loud now. What up, folks? Now you can hear me. I know
Oh
you
yeah,
can.
now he is.
That's
Yeah,
real
there he
nice. That's almost too loud, I think. All right, sorry about that. Yeah, so thanks for everybody being here. I see Spazoinks, Yolanda, Metaskull, first time chat, Oxfan damage. I hope that's a meta and magic OG. Anthony's is here. All good to see you. We freaking love you all. Again, alerts, all the good stuff not going on right now because we don't want it to interrupt our conversation. So thank you for all the subs and follows in advance. And then, something new. What we're going to do here a little bit before we start talking to our esteemed guest is we want to reiterate what midlife crisis is. And Maddie and I have been working on this a lot, and we're just going to do this every time we introduce ourselves, just so it is ingrained in everybody's heads like what our mission statement are. So one,
is. P.
we are hands down a team of passionate people that gravitated towards each other because we share the same core values. Um, we're kind of sick of the corporate BS that we've all been through, and what we're really trying to do is build a empire based around our mission statement. And our mission statement is super simple here, people. We want to share the lost art of genuine human connection. Mikey G's chuffed, Maddie's chuffed, Ash is chuffed. Our whole team is chuffed. We love connecting with people. And as tech and everything becomes more prevalent, we think just that the simple art of human connection is going away. And how are we going to do that? Well, you're about to see how we're doing it. We're having honest conversations with genuine people throughout the NFT and crypto space, and we love doing what we're doing. And then in addition, people ask us a lot, like, what is midlife? What are we doing ultimately? And we think we're going to build the first most amazing media company that exists in the NFT space, and we can't freaking wait to do that. But before I say hello to Elijah and Sarabat, I want to tell you a little bit about them. Elijah is an amazing human being, has had multiple startups, an acoustic engineering construction company. This dude's building stadiums.
Yeah, concert
He's
halls.
building concert halls. He's making those concerts sound real, real, real nice. Uh, in addition to that, he got into yield farming last year when we talked about, I my famous story of me winning a cool cat. Uh, got in around the same time, learned about the space when everyone was happy go lucky. Now we're going through some bearish markets, some harder times. Uh, but that is who Elijah is in a nutshell. Elijah, how are you doing today? And thank you so much for coming on the show.
Hey, Mikey, thank you for having me and my team in this show. It's a pleasure to be here.
Fantastic. Thank you. I'm so excited to get in this conversation. And second, I want to introduce you to Sarah Bat, biomedical engineer. It just sounds like a smart title. I don't even know what that is. Way smarter than I probably ever will be. Loves to play volleyball. I am a beach bum, so I might be able to take her down in a game of volleyball, but if she plays every weekend, probably not. We are so excited to have you, Sarah Bat. Thanks for coming. How you doing?
Thanks for having us.
Oh,
Thanks for
for
having us. It's a
sure.
great morning. Thanks for having us.
Yes, and so there was a little mix up in the old time zone thing. We learned a lesson, Elijah and Sarah, that probably should tell you that I'm in California like the first thing when we start talking, so I apologize about that. Me and my typical American ways, I just assume everybody lives in America, and that's not the case, especially in the NFT world. So,
No
so
worries about that. Yeah.
yeah, no, but we're here. So we're gonna ask our famous question, and so Elijah and Sarah Bat, I don't know if you can see the stream, but we're gonna start from the top. So I'll start with you, Elijah. Our famous question is, how did you get to the seat you're sitting in today? Feel free to go as far back as when you were a baby in the crib, when you were in college, when you were in high school, to go far as back as you want and talk to us about that point and how you got to literally the show today.
Yeah, sure. So, for myself, I'm more of a startup person. So, I had my first startup 7 years ago, right after I finished school. And I think that was the startup that Mikey was referring to, which is an acoustics company. So we built, concert halls, we built auditoriums, and so on. And this startup has done pretty well, actually. We've got dealers or representatives in 24 countries. So there is a
Nice.
dealer in Florida, in the States as well, and so on. And after a while, we moved into parametric design, which is my second startup. So in parametric design, we do things, for example, computational design for facade. You have these organic shapes, whether it's for interior or exterior, that sort of stuff. So we got our hands into coding. So Cerebet does the coding as well. And after that, we went further into machine learning. So machine learning, which is my other company called Nested Technologies. Over there, we do machine learning, which is artificial intelligence, training of models for things like quantity surveying, prediction of the U.S. equities, and so on. And it was in this latest company which I had my personal interest in crypto. So for myself, I started crypto in 2017. I did Ethereum farming. I farmed for ETH. I had like a mining rig, and we did that for 3 to 4 years, I think. And about the same time, that was when we went into things like yield farming as well, from just, staking the coins. And it was in last year, 2021, in around September. I took a dive into the NFT world and I loved it. I think partly the reason I, sort of felt in line with the NFT space is likely that my father is an artist. So it came quite naturally to me that, I was a person who likes to draw as well. And, when you mix crypto with art, you get non-fungible tokens. And I would say during September when I joined, the NFT space was a lot more genuine. It was, we had these projects, whichever projects would come up, we were just so excited for it, and most of the projects which you bought into would just moon. And that was ongoing for a while until I think perhaps at the start of this year. Then we had a bit of a NFT bear market. So people were more aware that projects needed some sort of value to survive and not just on hype, because in the earlier years any project would just sell out in seconds, and then people would dump them post review on OpenSea, and the collection would die 2 days later. So that happened to a lot of the projects. But having said this, we did have some pretty good ones. For example, like Cool Cats, Cyberkongs, like
Yeah.
Wolf Game, and derivations of Wolf Game like Wizards and Dragons. And one of the thing that happened there as well was many of these projects would live on hype, and if they did not live on hype, they would not be considered a blue chip, right? So eventually, the attention span of a human that goes on for, I would say, no more than 6 to 8 weeks for
Right.
any project, for any
Right.
project for the matter. And
Yep.
if they did not survive that, then it would just be yet another pump and dump scheme. So I didn't like that at all. I wanted whoever was in the meta magic community to be with us, to acknowledge that in the first place. And I think it's important if you try to tackle a problem, you don't just cover it up and say, oh, let's hype this and bring it as high as it would go. But what if you just lay back and realistically ask yourself, if most of the projects have this sort of expectations, then why don't we tackle the problem head on? So why don't we acknowledge that most projects would die within 8 to 10 weeks, simply because the human span, the attention is as such. So we design Meta Magic acknowledging that, which is why we have 3 seasons, and for each season, the duration for the boss fights are only 10 weeks long. Yeah, so before I proceed further, Mikey, do you want me to talk about the game, or do you have further questions you want to ask me?
Oh, we have a ton of questions based off what
Oh,
you
we got
said,
questions.
but I
Mm-hmm.
also, Matt, do you want to ask a couple follow-up questions right now, or do you want to get Saravat's background first?
Well, let's a couple follow-up questions while
Yep.
it's the topic. And I would say this. So you already have an established background in startups, right? And I think, and this is just my opinion, at least for me, when it came to starting businesses, it's because whenever I saw problems in a particular area, I just felt that I could solve them better than what I was seeing other people solve them as. And so I was like, well, the proverbial, if you want something done, do it yourself. So as you entered in the NFT space, is that what drew you to wanting to have your own project, or did you kind of always know, or is it one of those you saw some of these, as you said very well, right? Is that rather than covering up problems, it's better to acknowledge them and then solve them. Was it that kind of like triggered your entrepreneurial spirit into saying, you know what, I need to do a project myself?
Yeah, I think you're right to say that. So, personally, as much as I would like to solve problems, a passionate side of myself was that I just literally loved being in the NFT space, and what better to enjoy the scene itself other than to be involved in a project that is your own. So that was the first motivation, and once I was set on doing that. I was in the anonymized community that was last year as well, and if you guys
Yeah.
could recall, anonymized was an on-chain, 100% on-chain community that minted out. There was no website, there was no API, it was just all code. People who wanted to mint it, would
Yep.
have to go to Etherscan to do it, and we saw the price of anonymized go from a free mint to 14 ETH per mouse in just as little as 40 days.
That's
And that
crazy.
just blew my mind. Yeah,
Yeah,
because
amazing.
I owned 4 mices then. I still own them. And if you add the value of the mices in those days at the all-time high, you could easily buy a house in Singapore or any part of the world. So that concept was just so mind-blowing to myself, and
Yeah.
I liked ideas that were not just write about another IPFS collection. I like things to be technological, which is why we've chosen Meta Magic to be 100% on chain. I think
Uh-huh.
one of the reasons for that is we thought if anyone could do any uh, collection that was just another PFP, we thought that was perhaps a little overdone. And we thought, regardless of the success of the project, if we had something that was technologically backed up, which means to say 100% on chain, we're just not talking about the PNGs and the SVGs of the images on chain, but we're talking about, the fight logic, which is on chain, right?
Yeah.
The staking and everything else, which is on chain, which is really hard to code. And if we actually did that successfully, at least as a team, and back to our community, we could say, hey guys, we've actually done this.
Yeah.
And no one else has, done it before. So kind of like a technological fest, and we like that idea better than just going out there to be just yet another PFP collection.
And so that's interesting that you say that, because one of the things that I hear, and correct me if I'm wrong, is one of the things that you're passionate about is trying to advance the space as well. Like, you're trying to create a game on chain, do it in an interesting, unique way. Does that sound right, or I missed the mark there?
Absolutely, which is why, when we started the project in the earlier days, we spoke with Ranspot, who, was the former community manager for Anonymize, and then he brought in Malstev, who is the founder of Anonymize. Malstev
Mm.
was interested in, Meta Magic, and he joined us as an advisor. And Malstev saw the amount of work that was to be done, being on chain and all, so he brought in another on chain a dev who is well known in the space, and that's Bassett from Ethos. So Bassett liked
Oh
our
yeah.
idea as well. Yeah, which is why Bassett is in our team as the main developer.
Yeah, Etherworks is still sitting at a pretty nice, that's gone in a nice floor as well, and just a really cool game as well too. That's awesome. Um, Maddie, did you have a follow-up question to that? I thought you had one or two.
I did, but I think let's we can do that a little bit later. I want to
Okay,
talk
cool.
to Sarabat.
All right, Sarabat, now on to you, and the same question. Uh, as much detail, as little detail as you want, but how'd you get to the seat you're sitting in today? Because we'd love to hear about that.
Right. Thanks for reiterating the question.
Oh,
I
for
almost
sure.
forgot.
No, it's
Right.
totally
problem.
fine. Totally fine.
I've been working with Elijah since the acoustic days, right? So then he wanted to do computational design, and I'm like, okay. And then and then he went into crypto, became my portfolio manager, right? He does the groundwork for me. And then he said, I want to do an NFT project. And initially I was like, no, K, because the projects at that point in time, they were, I think, from my point of view, quite lacking in utility. Because as someone with an, I think, probably attributed to my background in engineering, I kind of want to see the utility in most things, in most projects. So that went on. He came back with reiteration of his plans, and finally we end up with Meta and Magic, and I was like, okay, and here we are.
That's amazing. And I love the fact that you just used the term no K. That was fantastic. And so the NFT, when you first heard about it, what was that original just apprehension, because you heard it was scammy? Was there anything in particular about
Yeah.
the NFT space that made you really not attracted to it?
Well, the lack of utility from the start, I guess. Or perhaps it's my lack of understanding in the NFT space, especially since I don't have to do the groundwork myself.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you would have heard people say that NFT space, it's a bubble, it's waiting to burst.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
without a utility, you don't have a foundation,
Right,
right?
right, right. No, that makes sense. And was it purely just you knowing Elijah, and Elijah being like pretty bullish on NFTs, where you're like, okay, I'll just let him manage my portfolio and see what happens? Or was there something else that you saw in the NFT space to make you think, okay, this could be a thing?
Well, he does the groundwork on himself. So his portfolios would be mixed with reds and greens, and my portfolio is mostly greens.
I
Yeah,
love
I did
it.
a better job handling Sarah Bad's portfolio than my own portfolio. But yeah, that's good for him. Glad it, worked out.
So not only does he manage your portfolio, you saw a lot of green, and most people like that. They like to see a lot of green, so that's fantastic. Maddie, any follow-up questions to Sarah's background?
Yeah, so I guess a couple things. One, I mean, you had said earlier that it was basically between, going the traditional route based on what you had studied or going into a startup, and you chose a startup, right? And
Mhm.
you followed Elijah kind of along this path. And so I mean, Mike's saying what made you hesitant, but here's something I'd be curious about. How did it weigh into how do I say this? Elijah, you mentioned it when you mentioned how much the value of the NFTs you had purchased meant in Singapore, how you could purchase a home for them. And how do you think that weighs? I'm just curious for both of you to answer this. In Singapore, how has the NFT space weighed? Because, here, in different areas of the world, $10,000 means different things, obvious things, you know what I mean? Do you think that there's something to be said about the fact that in a lot of the world, an NFT worth 14 ETH is literally like life changing for most people? Do you think that that weighs different for maybe projects to want to have more incentive to maybe do something different or something that mints out, or maybe something the other direction, right? You think that keeps things more ethical or less ethical if you're in a different area of the world? And that's kind of I'm asking if that was a part of the influence that kind of drew you into the NFT space.
All right, I hear a question. So first, I just want to say this: 14 ETH in any part of the world, I think is quite life-changing.
For sure, right? Yeah, for sure. Unless you like
Yeah,
live in Manhattan, you know what I mean? Yeah, for sure.
yeah. So there are two sides of to this equation. You have the creators, right? The creators who try to create utility in NFT. It doesn't matter if it's an NFT, it could be like a yield farm, it could be, entirely something else. So you
Sure.
have the creators who come to this to try the best, to make utility for the community whom they serve. And then of course, if their project mints out, they get royalties from OpenSea, that's definitely good for them. So the question begs, is this a life-changing amount of money? Well, it depends. I think there are certain risks involved with being creators as well. So not all projects will be successful. And in fact, most of the projects they fail, whether it's minting or whether it's a yield farming.
Sure.
And having said this, investors are not dumb as well. The community is, not just quiet on the side. As much as there's a lot of work to be done by, the creator himself. For example, we're in a bear market, and if you look at just 2 days ago, there were a couple of these projects, very high projects. They were just having so little momentum. And they were minting, and even within the community and cross community, people were saying, it's the worst time to release for a mint. And actually, this relates directly back to MetaMagic. I think we fall into the camp that we were actually planning to release for a mint today. But we listen to our community. We think that as team members, as much as we have a good insight together with the mods into what the space is, ultimately as a whole, MetaMagic, the community wins. And you have to listen to the voices of these people. Because if they say it's a no-go for a mint because it's a bearish sentiment, and then we have to listen to it and we say, okay, then when's a
Yeah.
better time? So that's the first thing. And then of course, in terms of a life-changing moment for minting NFTs, for the community themselves. So that's me when I was minting NFTs, and in fact I just minted an NFT yesterday for one of the project called BBRC, which is the Ivy Boys project. So for these people, if you hold an NFT, let's say you minted it at below an ETH, and then you hold it for I don't know as little as 2 weeks, And if enough hype would be gathered, or the utilities would indeed good, and then the whales start pouring the money in, and indeed you flip that one ETH to anywhere between 5 or 10 ETH, and it's certainly a life-changing money. And I think this
Sure.
aspect of the fact that for a lot of these, people, regardless of which country you're in or which stage of life you're in, whether you're a student, because as a student, 5 ETH is a lot of money, and one
Sure.
ETH is a lot of money for some parts of the other world. So I think it is this hope, that allows almost everyone, to participate in minting something as low as 0.05 ETH, and then eventually flipping that to something much bigger. I think it is the hope
Gotcha.
that puts a lot of people, into the NFT space.
Gotcha. So the same hope basically is universally a motivating factor. That makes sense. Okay.
I love it.
All right.
Yeah, I would say, if we look at, where a student would have no income, or whether you're a working adult, in a country which is still currently developing, some of these flips themselves would be equivalent to, let's say, an annual salary for some of them.
For sure.
So yeah, certainly.
Yeah. Now, Sarah Beth, I guess what I was saying, let me give an example. When Mike first got into this space and told me that he had a picture of an animated cat that was worth $20,000, that changed my opinion on wanting to learn about NFTs, right? So I also had a little bit of resistance in terms of, and man, it burns me up because Mikey was like, there's this project that Gary V is doing, and how much was it at the time, Mike?
I think he had a Dutch auction and it went down to, I don't know,
It,
0.2,
it was
0.3 ETH,
yeah, yeah, it was
maybe even
absolutely
lower.
reasonable to get into VFriends. And I was just like, no way, there's nothing about this. And it wasn't till Mike had a cat that was worth $20,000 that all of a sudden I was like, okay, wait, tell me more about ETH, or tell me more about NFTs. I guess what I'm saying is it the success that Elijah had in the space that drew you to it, or was it just he convinced you based on, you had followed him with other startups?
It's funny that you mentioned about a cat, worth however much, because I look on social media, and
Mhm.
every now and then people will be like, "Oh, this JPEG, well, it's worth 14,000,"
Yeah,
and I'm like, "You're wrong, but you're right. I can't argue with that."
right.
Um, we're mostly concerned about the ethics of our project, right?
Mhm.
Um, so which is why we try to inject utility into the project. So that goes into the design of the game, how we intend to reward the community, not just to the whales, right? Because the whales, they could buy, um, well, if they could afford it, they would just buy up a huge chunk of the tokens, right? A
Right,
huge chunk of the NFTs. And
Sure.
then that means that they could win very easily, right?
right.
We want to balance that out, as with any economy. And we design that into our reward system. I think later, as we speak more, Elijah would be able to elaborate on this.
Yeah. So before
Okay.
we get to the actual how it works, because I know we have a ton to talk about in the game, uh, I'd love to hear from you, Elijah, and then Sarah, Bat, if you have anything to add. But we've been talking about your experience in this NFT journey, Elijah, particularly for you, starting off with, when were you like, you know what? I want to make an on-chain game. I'm going to do this the right way because a lot of the crux of what we're talking about right now is, yes, money is life-changing, but at the same time, you both were frustrated by the lack of utility and the people trying to do it in an honest and a right way, right? So at what point, and what time of the year, or was there something that happened that made you, Elijah, say, "Hey, this is it. I'm doubling down and I'm gonna make my own NFT. And not only am I gonna make my own NFT, I'm gonna do it one of the hardest ways possible by making an on-chain game."
Yeah, so before I get into the question, I think I do have a fan who is reaching out to me. It's been a great pleasure in the community. He's joined the Midlife Crisis as well. So hello, Block, to you. Hello.
Oh, that's fantastic. I'm glad that community people are here as well. That's fantastic.
Yeah. Okay,
That's
let me
awesome.
get right into the question. So in terms of utility, one of the uh, main points, I think the root solution to any utility for the matter, and let me make this clear. When we say utility, first you have to ask yourself, does this utility, is it based on some level of hype? So if the utility is based on a level of hype, then is it true utility at all? Because you then have
Mm,
people who come in, and if they come in a bit later and they get dumped before everyone else, then that utility is not much of a utility, is it? I'll give you an example. If I say I create an NFT game and I, have a utility where we give out these in-game tokens, right? You stake perhaps your hero or your NFT, and then in exchange we give you some, game coins. Um, what usually follows after is you would have, some sort of appreciation of the game coin according to the hype of the game. And then as the game approaches, to the end of the attention human span, which is approximately 8 to 10 weeks, the coin falls in value, and then the game dumps. That's almost every single game that has released, a form of an in-game currency. Almost every game, like even BAYC with Ape tokens. After they did their land sale, I got 2 lands, and then you could see ApeCoin just losing more than half its value as of it is today. So is that utility? Is maybe it is utility to sell it in the beginning, but how about the rest of the people who didn't have the time to do it? So
for sure.
we created this, yeah, so we created this project that we didn't want it to be on hype, which is why all the game tokens which are given out in this game are not shit coins. They're not some magical coins we, came up with. They're real coins, so they're real tokens. We're talking about ETH, we're talking about USDC, we're talking about USDT. So that's one of the, I think, aspect of the game that people were quite interested in coming into, because essentially we're telling people, hey, look, with the mint proceeds that we have, a good part of this is going, into building future seasons of the game. But at the same time, we are actually giving back the mint proceeds as actual coins, tokens. So if you fight the boss, and we have 10 bosses, right? 1 boss per week. And if you're the top scorer for the boss, you win 50% of these coins. And for example, I think in the last boss, which is the what's a fire element boss with the name? I think Tetherbit of Resurrection or something like this. And with that boss, you would have a prize token of, I think it was over 100,000 USDC. So as the top scorer, you get 50% of
Woo!
that, which is quite a fair bit of money.
Woo!
And
Yeah.
the remaining 50% is actually raffled out to any winner. So we did this as a anti-will mechanism, because we didn't just want people, like what Sarabat said, if you could buy the best item, then you fight with it, then you will win the game naturally. So we didn't want that. So we say, well, how about anyone who won the game gets raffled for 50% of the remaining tokens. And
I love it.
generally that was the main mechanism behind Math and Magic. We built this game so that it wouldn't need hype to survive, and being acknowledging the fact that with all the community members who joined the
Yep.
game, and which is probably why they are interested in the game before, uh, it makes Math and Magic perhaps the first project to actually do this,
Yeah,
right?
no, I love it. And so I wanna back up real quick though. I love that explanation. And I that the mechanics, and I've seen that your Discord unfold. It's awesome. What was there a moment in time that made you decide this is what you were gonna do? Or was it a culmination of just meeting friends in the space? Like, what was that moment where you decided, I'm gonna start this project?
Well, you'll be surprised as much as I hold these AMAs, and I think this will be the 5th AMA that we have. In real life, I'm actually quite a quiet person. I don't actually go for any NFT meetups. I'm more
Uh-huh.
of a person or a builder who, I'm we were in the office or we are working from home, and I just build things. I don't really go for events to do any marketing. I'm not that sort of person.
Yeah.
So which explains why, I have like a machine learning company. We run through these data to see through, these possible alphas and so on. Yeah.
Okay, so you just it wasn't really any moment. You were just like, you know what? I'm at home. I love making things, and I'm just gonna, I'm in NFTs and I'm gonna make my project. Is that about right?
That's absolutely right. So I'm more of a person who builds things. Like I said, perhaps the motivation of the game and the fact that it does not live on hype means I'm not the sort of person who likes to hype things. I'm not the sort of person who likes to pay for marketing dollars. I believe if a project is good enough, it should have an organic word of mouth.
Awesome.
And yeah, and if we have a community with us today in Discord and Twitter at about 30,000, and I think that speaks for itself.
Yeah, for sure. And so, before we get into the details of the game again, can you talk to us real quick? Because I think people are always very interested in our audience and the NFT community audience as a whole. Um, Once you decided, hey, I'm just going to build this, I'm going to make things, how did you formulate that team? We know Sarabat and you had worked together. How did you formulate the rest of your core team? And can you walk us through that process?
Sure. So the majority of the core team is from my company, Nesta Technologies, right? So
Okay.
I started this, I spoke with Sarah a bit about the idea, and then I spoke to Estrella, who's the artist. She's working in Nesta Technologies as well. She's actually handling DevOps. Estrella has always been, an artist. She likes to paint. She does these fantastic wave paintings that she sells them on, I think, Etsy. She,
Okay.
gives the paintings away to her community and church as well, that sort of stuff. So that's really good. And we wanted people who were with us to build the first versions of the game. So that actually happened in 2021, sometime in November, December. So we got in, some of these in-house devs, Ashton, Rahul, and a couple of them. And we built the first version of Meta Magic. So it was in this moment that we wanted it on chain and also, to have the game logic and the fight script to be on chain. And at about this time, I spoke with, Randspot, who's the former community manager for Mice, for Anonymice. And he brought in Mousedev, who is the founder of Anonymice, and Mousedev was interested in an idea. He decided to join us in this journey. And Mousedev, looked at the code and he said, "Well, there's a lot to be done." So he wanted someone who was good in on-chain code as well. And he approached Ethorx, Bassett from Ethorx. And Bassett was, uh, we were lucky because Bassett liked the idea as well, which is why Bassett, joined us as the main developer, and together we, made this happen, right? So the fight script, all the way from the early days to now being 100%, in solidity on the Ethereum chain.
That's amazing. And so what's really interesting, and Maddie, do you have any questions? Because I have another question. I don't want to
No, go ahead.
cut
Go
you off.
ahead.
What's really
You're good.
interesting to me, Elijah, is we talk to tons of projects, and I get hit up all the time about marketing, right? And how do you build hype, and how do you get people
Hmm.
attracted? Um, and you took this interesting route that not many people come on this show and talk about it, whereas you're a builder, you already had a company, you put a team together of people that are really smart and you could believe in, and you just
Hmm.
built something. And now you've amassed 30,000 people, across your Discord and your Twitter, and I'm assuming you had no marketing, right? So, do you just attribute that to having, an amazing idea that people are interested in?
So I think there are two camps in the NFT space. So perhaps the majority of your listener belong to the first camp, and the first camp will be people who are actually interested in technological changes in the blockchain and crypto and NFTs.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say, these people are the people who want to play on-chain games because they believe in the value of on-chain.
Mhm.
So being on-chain means, we don't rely on an AWS server or an IPFS address somewhere from being up. On-chain means as long as the Ethereum network survives, your artwork is hard-coded into the blockchain itself. So I think that fact alone is it's pretty amazing. And these are also the true, I would say, the community of people who do not react as quickly to hype. So if you look generally across all the projects, these are the projects that have, a floor price which is pretty stable, whether that's, stably increasing or in a bear market, you don't see a dump. And it just, gets attributed to the type of, person you are. So I am glad that, we have people who are like-minded and who believe in the fact that, for any NFT projects, you don't just need hype to survive.
Dude, I love it. And it's so refreshing to hear that because you're confident in what you're doing and people are understanding that and that there are projects that can exist based off doing something new and using the technology the way we should be
Yeah.
using it. Go
Now,
ahead, Manny.
yeah, so I agree with that, Mike. What my question then would be then is you were talking about the average attention span earlier, and I knew that's why you were talking about in terms of seasons. But let's just talk about it in general, right? The attention span in the NFT space is relatively small. So how do you reconcile authentic utility is a great, and you're right, like long term, eventually people will recognize the right thing, right? But a lot of, for example, in the industry, in a lot of industry, specifically in engineering, just because it's an amazing, innovative idea and it's different and it's profound, doesn't necessarily mean that it catches on quickly, right? Because people like
Hmm. Good
trends and
thought.
there's all kinds of things that occur. And in many ways, marketing and hype is what gets things to shift, right? That's what kind of moves people into finally saying, "Ooh, I need a Tesla." You know what I'm saying? Even though intuitively we can recognize an electric car is a good decision. Does that make sense? So how do you balance those two?
I hear what you're saying, and I agree with it. So we think that if there were any hype for the project at all, it should be from word of mouth. So, for example, community
Got it.
members or with these sort of strong collaborations that we have with, communities we think are in the same camp, then that I
I
would
see.
agree to. But if you were to say something like, "Oh, Elijah, would you, have like a billboard somewhere in the middle of town where everybody can see it?"
For sure.
Maybe not so much for an on-chain project because to
Got it.
begin with, if you have like a billboard and you say it's 100% on-chain game, I think that the people will be scratching their heads as to what 100% on-chain game actually means.
Right, right.
Got it.
No,
So you basically created an environment for word of mouth to help spread the word and kind of organically grow what it is you were building. That makes sense. Okay,
right.
perfect. That was a great
And
answer.
and I think too, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Elijah. What I'm also hearing, and I think the angle is it's the right angle is you're not spending really any money on marketing. You're creating technology and talking to the right consumer segment, which is diehard NFT gaming people that understand how incredible on-chain technology is. And the other reason that you're interested in that is and it benefits the project is these people naturally are going to stick around for the technology and the gaming and it's not based off hype like we've been talking about. And it seems like that was all kind of calculated in the beginning. Am I right by saying that?
You're absolutely right.
Awesome. Yeah, and that makes sense and it's just again super refreshing to know that you're trying to build it the right way and you saw that opportunity. Off the top of your head, and Sarah, feel free to add to this too, but what are other people doing on-chain things right now in the NFT world that you are fascinated with or impressed by? I know you mentioned a couple before. Are there any others out there that you really inspired you to do this project?
Sure. Let me name, I think, what I think would eventually be achieved for, NFTs in general. I think we see a few of these metaverses that popped up, these really huge projects, for example, like Sandbox, like Decentraland, and so on. And we ask ourselves the question, what's the purpose of an NFT eventually? What is it going to evolve into? What's it like for, the crypto space, blockchain, and so on? So I think the first thing we should be aware is that, blockchain, crypto in general, tries to solve the transparency issue where, any transaction for the matter can be seen by everybody. And then there's also the part where it is, not changeable, right? So you cannot, change a transaction for your own good. And I think it is this liberation, of knowing that the blockchain is open for, audit by anyone, makes it, a credible system. So where does NFT come into this? Now, if you have an NFT project which is held on IPFS, then at any point in time, if the server were to go down, it's gone. It's
So
down
what?
until yeah, and at least until the server's back up. So if I would say this to you, if you think that an avatar that you purchase from OpenSea, sometime in the future, maybe 10 years from now, not today, right? That avatar is going to be, a skin to your metaverse
Right.
self, right? Kind of
Right.
like how we have it in games at the moment.
Right.
And would you be confident to know that this is hosted on an AWS server? Would you be confident that this is, held by perhaps some other server elsewhere? Because that thing that you paid for is still being owned by a company, a conglomeration. For
Mm,
myself, I think the NFT space, if it's any, um, if it's any extension of our human self into the digital form, I feel this ecosystem or this structure that it is based on should be entirely on chain, so that whatever is for the community is held by the community and backed by the community. That I think is ultimately why I feel on-chain projects are the future of the projects. And yeah, and I hope more people would come to realize this sooner than later. There will be brands, for example, like Nike and Adidas, they come in with your projects on IPFS. That's fully understandable. It's not possible to have a JPEG, which is on chain at the moment, simply because, you can only have a certain amount of file size for a contract. But eventually, the progression of blockchain in general, I feel should be towards a part where we have, 100% of, our NFTs or whatever tokens that we have, the logic of the game itself to be, audited by everyone, to be held, in the blockchain.
that is probably one of the best explanations we have heard on this show of why on-chain technology is so important. And I appreciate that uh, feedback and kind of concise delivery of that.
Yeah, it was very succinct, and it really boiled it down to why it matters. Very well said.
Right. And then so it's, it's cool that you're cultivating a community that understands that as well, and the fact that these assets are going to live forever. What what uh, what do
Well, hey,
you
Mike, 1 second. Speaking of organic community and celebrating doing things the right way, real quick shout out. Have to do a shout out to Yolanda coming in huge with a stream team redemption.
Stream Team
Big,
Redemption.
big news, big news. This is a huge deal, folks. If you don't know, it takes 30,000 channel points to redeem for Stream Team. It is a very select few that have done it. She is in good company, and that is a massive, massive accomplishment. So we normally do not stop the stream or the interview for something like that, but that is an alert that everybody needs to get fired up for. So I'm
Matt,
excited. I'm gonna switch over the name to Purple. She gets the royal purple, and it's game time.
hell yeah. Can you explain to Elijah and Sarabat like how big of a deal this is? Like
Yes,
how long do they have to watch our stream to actually acquire that
yes.
title?
So the average person accumulates somewhere between 150 to 200 channel points roughly per hour. So to put that in perspective, that means we only stream, a couple times a week. This is months of somebody in here, hanging out, chatting, watching this stream, loyal. And it's not easy. And on top of that, we have a couple little traps in there, some easy ways to get people to spend channel points on other things. So you got to be dedicated. And that's months of viewing, saving up points to be able to redeem for Stream Team. And so we give special privileges in the Discord for that. But yes, that is a big deal. It is not easy, and that is why we celebrate it.
I love it. I love it. Congratulations, Yolanda. Thanks for letting us pause, Elijah and Sarabat. So what I was gonna ask Elijah is, I think you bring up such an interesting point, and then I promise after this we can get to the actual game and go down that path. But this is a really fascinating conversation. I think more people need to hear it. My interpretation of why people love NFTs is because you can make money, right? There is this PFP kind of people attracted to artwork, and artists can make money that way. Um, do you think that's the main reason why the power of true NFTs on chain and on chain gaming is lost? Is just the hype around the money you can make?
I'm not really a person who is into this because of the money. I mean, there are a bunch of things you can do for money. So I already have a few successful startups. So I think
Right.
Yeah.
that's not
So I'm not
my
I'm not
motivation.
saying you particularly. I'm saying the general public, right? I
hmm
I think a majority of the people get into NFTs because they're like, holy crap, I can make how much is that JPEG worth? But and my question to you is, do you think that is why because how you just explained how important owning your
hmm
asset on chain opposed to being in an AWS server, that's massive, right? That's a huge new leap in technology. And I don't even, if you ask people how NFTs work, most people wouldn't even be able to tell you. So I think my question or my statement to you is, do you think that's why most people just get into it and don't understand um, the power of on-chain gaming or how it even works? I think that's my question. I'm not talking to you specifically, right?
hmm hmm Um, there are people who come into the NFT space for the money. I would say that accounts for perhaps 60 to 70% of the community itself.
Hmm.
And then we have the remaining maybe 20 to 30% who just like blockchain in general. And also amongst those people, we have, people who are here for the art. Right? So
Right.
let's not discount the fact that, a huge amount of volume in the NFT space is from, either bots, giving, excuse me,
It's
from
okay.
either bots giving liquidity to OpenSea or, just simply from funds, NFT funds from these whales who are, getting into the space to flip a profit. So let's not, kid ourselves that it's not about the money.
Yeah.
What I
Yeah.
do want to say is if you had a project that you could invest in, and there are a bunch of these projects around, there are people grinding for whitelists, in very high projects, and then if you do get a whitelist, you can do a flip, right? So that's pretty good, like Moonbits, right? You bought it at a whitelist price of 2 ETH, and then today it's at, I don't know, 20 ETH, but at an all-time high, it was close to like 38 ETH. So that's good as well. So the money aspect of that is taken care of. But I also like to say that, with the 70% of the population who are into the space to make money, they're not dumb. These people are not just going to, throw their hot and ETH, which was, a good reminder to all of us here, came from cash, right? Came from your currency. That's US dollars or Sing dollars or Canadian dollars.
Right.
So they are going to do their research, and if they do their research, there are two ways you can put your money to good use. First, you would come in if you're new, you get rocked by a few projects, or then you start realizing, that even if you do get a whitelist, you grind hard enough and you don't sell it pre-review, chances are you might lose money. And a lot of people hold it post-review because they're just waiting for the one-of-one NFT that they hope it will be theirs. But in the long term, unless you know what you're doing, chances are it's quite difficult to get into a project, from the whitelisted stage and holding it long enough for it to actually reach its all-time high, and then selling it at all-time high. So you see the three things you need to do. You have to get in at a stage where it's low. You have to hold it and have determination, right, to make sure that this is indeed the project that will moon. And then finally, you have to sell at all-time high. So three things to do before you get rich.
Right.
And for a lot of people, it's not so easy. So what
Sure.
we at Meta Magic would like to do for the people who put their money into, buying the NFTs, who do the whitelisted people, we say these are the things, the technologies on chain, right? Part of the proceeds from the mint will be price tokens and real coins. And then you make the decision, right? If the price of the token afterwards on secondary, right, does not moon, is there any utility or benefit left for you at all? There is. You can play the game, right? And if you play the game well, you can claim boss drops, which are, free NFTs for claiming. And then finally, if you get raffled or if you're, the top scorer in the fight score, you get real ETH and USDC. So we put these things out, to the people and say, have a look. I'm sure you're quite smart. Make your own decision.
I love it. That what a great pitch. What a fantastic pitch. I love it. That's fantastic. And so that is kind of, I mean, one of our next questions, like going in, Matt, before we get into the actual game and really give our community a breakdown of
Yeah.
how it works, do you have anything else?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I like everything you're saying, and I would agree that for the people who are educated in this space, you're 100% correct. I do think it's interesting that there is a window of time when people are new to the space, because remember, not everybody's coming in as an already successful startup entrepreneur such as yourself, right? You have a certain way of thinking about well, really how you view anything, right? But you have a way of thinking that's going to help quickly filter out the good from the bad, simply because you've had to develop that just to thrive in the business space. But I think a lot of people, I'll say this: the average person in the bell curve here that's joining the space, there's a pretty brutal learning curve window for at least, let's just be generous, say at least 3 months, right? Of that. And it's interesting because those people need to learn essentially your breakdown of why a game on chain makes sense in a relatively quick period of time. And what my question is do you have are you relying on people who already know, and basically they're a little more, I don't want to say advanced, but like they're just a little bit more experienced in the space? Or do you also have an educational component to kind of get the word out on why what you're doing is so powerful?
So we have a walkthrough actually just written 3 days ago by Sarah Beth, which
Nice.
tells with screenshots, step by step on how to actually play the game. But I'm also glad to say that of the many dry runs we had, playing the game. So I've actually completed the game 7 times in Rinkeby. But of the many dry runs that we had Astraeak, who actually played the game for the first time just a couple of weeks ago and completed it with us. And Astraeak, she's not as involved in the NFT space as I am, because obviously I handle all the devs, right? So
Sure.
Astraeak is more of an artist. She deals with DevOps in a Web2 space, not so much in the Web3 space. But I was happy to know that Astraeak actually completed the game by herself, right? So she went through all the staking, the unstaking, the fighting of the bosses, claiming of the enterprise tokens and the boss drops, and she did it all by herself with no documentation whatsoever. So I would say, just for right about any average NFT player who doesn't know anything about being, on-chain technologies, you can actually do it quite easily. The UI UX on it is pretty friendly to the average user.
I love it.
Gotcha.
And that's
Cool.
awesome that you did user testing and you're getting that feedback. So going into the game, can you give us I think you did a good pitch on why meta and magic, right? So on chain, we're not making a empty shit coin. We're gonna give you actual chance to win ETH and USD.
Yeah.
We have multiple seasons. We understand about utility and its attention span. Can you actually explain? Because I think if you're not into the community, you have heroes, you have items. Can you kind of explain all the nuances and the heroes and the items, and kind of how the minting process works, and then how the game works?
Yeah, most certainly. The game is quite straightforward. It is a 10-week game, so it is 10 weeks per season. In total, we have 3 seasons planned. So we are starting season 1 soon. And each week, you fight a boss, right? And that boss, we took the names, we were inspired by, different crypto coins and so on. So, for example, the first boss is called Inu Dodgemon, right? Because of the Dodge token. And each boss has its each boss has its own HP and magic, right? And it also has an element to it. So, for example, perhaps the boss this week has a fire element. And then, if you were to attack the boss, you would use a water element sword to gain an advantage over a fire element boss. So there
Gotcha.
are
Okay.
certain things in the game that are familiar with RPG gamers or mobile gamers. So, for example, we have things like penetration and resist. So we have magical penetration, physical penetration, and similar resist components to it. So if you have a boss which is heavily armored, he's got armored penetration, he's got a physical resistance, then you would want to use a weapon which can penetrate his armor, and in this case, that's a weapon which has physical pen. So in each of the week, right, you would have to own a hero. So the hero is your ticket to playing the game, and there are only 3,000 heroes ever. There will not be any more heroes in the future season. So 3,000 Genesis heroes, you have to own a hero, and with each of these heroes, you can equip up to 5 items. So you stack the items up and you fight the boss. You click the fight button. You let the fight calculator do its coding in Solidity, and then you submit a MetaMask transaction. And then if you win the fight, 2 things happen. The first thing is you get a fight score. So this fight score ranges from 0 to a really high number, like maybe 50,000 if you really own the boss, right? You did a good job. And then the next thing is for any player who wins the boss fight, you get to claim a boss drop. So what's a boss drop? A boss drop essentially is an item. It's a special item which belongs in the same items collection. And this boss drop is much more powerful than a regular item. And it also has characteristics of the boss itself. So that's really interesting because you can now use, a boss drop from the first boss, for example, Inu Dodgemon, who drop his Dodgemon tail. And then you could use this against perhaps the third boss down in the fight. And that's actually what we do recommend. So we recommend that players actually fight bosses regularly, all 10 bosses, because if you don't do that, and you decide to say, oh, let me, come to the game, and I'm a whale, I bought the best 5 items on OpenSea. Now I paid for I don't know, 1 ETH for each of them. So I'm gonna get a fight, the top fight score. Unfortunately, that's not how it's going to work. It will help if you buy top tier items, but we want to reward players in the game who have been around since the beginning, conscientiously fighting the bosses, getting these boss drops. And these boss drops are going to outperform most mid to high tier items. So that's the beauty, because ultimately you want to reward the people who are with you in the beginning and who actually play the game and not trying to flip this. And
Right.
I think that's a good way to do it. So we have two different types of players we can see here. So let me just explain a little. So the first type player, you own a hero. You were lucky enough to get one of these Genesis heroes, and then obviously we'll see an appreciation in the price of heroes because after all, you need a hero to participate in all three seasons. So that's the first thing. So to the people who are whitelisted, congratulations to you, because if you look at, our Discord channel, we have these gates for getting whitelisted for heroes. We have some of these people who have a hero. If you're familiar with the game itself, you would have to do like an exclamation mark hero and it gives you a score and you do it repeatedly. The grinding is insane. We have people with scores of over 400, who still don't have a whitelist. So if you have a hero, congratulations to you. I will not say why, top score is the only way to get a hero. But ultimately we see genuine user engagement to prevent bots from winning whitelists. So that's one of the reasons. Anyway, you get a hero, you play the game, you beat through all the 10 bosses, and then if you get the top score, you play consciously, you either get raffle prize tokens. If that's you, that's good, that's a huge amount of money. And if you don't, that's fine as well, because you still get to claim the boss drops you can sell on OpenSea, which fetch a higher value than the regular items. So that's one way. The other way, for the people who do not have a hero's whitelist or who are not able to get a hero, is there something you can do? There is. So if you own any of the items, right? If in our Discord you realize the roles for these people are called merchants, right? So merchants essentially they hold items only, and you can imagine there is going to be a trading or some sort of clever way to own a certain set of items prior to next week's boss fight. So let me give you a very specific example. If we are in, week 2, and you realize that in week 3, you have a boss which has a lightning element, and all earth element weapons, have an advantage to a lightning element boss, then it might be good as a merchant to buy or to own items in OpenSea that are, earth elemental in nature. And then you wait for, the release of the boss fight on week 3, and then there is going to be a demand for these earth element items because people want to get a higher fight score, and that's good for you because you foresaw this event and now you're profiting. So it's going to be a dynamic game. So you don't just need to own a hero to actually be able to participate in any of the trading. So which is why I think the game is one which is fit for all. We have essentially a low to no barrier of entry. So if you don't get a hero, that's fine. You still can play the game.
I love it. And the other thing that does is keep volume and interest going on OpenSea as well, which is really cool. Which most projects don't have that. It's like the initial mint, and then until some other utility comes out, nothing's really happening with a project. But now you have this happening on a weekly basis, and you have multiple seasons. That's really cool. Really cool idea. And I think that's why, I mean, it's just cool to see gaming because it's the natural fit, and it's cool to see people like you actually trying to do it the right way. Maddie, do you have a thought there?
I mean, I have a lot of thoughts when it comes to like just the nerdery involved because I'm big into RPGs and I have questions. I don't know, I don't know how effective they'll be, but I'll ask one. Will the items themselves have a random roll stat? What I mean by that is you said if a boss drops in the element they're in, let's say fire. Could Mike and I both get that boss drop and his kind of have an RNG factor where his item is better than mine?
So that's a really good question. I will give you the technical answer because I believe majority of the people here are actually quite, technically savvy.
Savvy, yep.
So we have all the items to have different traits, right? Some traits you have a certain rarity, you get like a uncommon rarity versus like a mythic rarity. Now, obviously, a mythic rarity is better. So when it comes
primal
to
legendaries for Mike to earn.
Oh, baby, we like Diablo. We play a lot of Diablo.
I love those item drops.
Yeah, I used to play Diablo as well. That was like 10 years ago. So
Right.
anyway, for for the boss drops themselves, we did ask ourselves the question, is every boss drop going to be identical? And if every boss drop is going to be identical, then you end up having like an ERC 1155 collection where it's just the same, and then you go to OpenSea, it says, times 250 or whatever it is. And one of the things that we realized for ERC 1155 collection is because so many people own the same item, it's just kind of boring and the price of that item drops. So we didn't like that. So we made it such that every single boss drop, every single Inu Dodgemon tail, which is the boss drop itself, is different. So if
Awesome.
Mike were to fight the boss, 2 minutes before you fought the boss, he's going to get a different Inu Dodgemon tail than the one you have. So maybe, Mike was a bit luckier. He has these rarer traits, yeah.
Mhm.
So this is
All
where,
right.
things
I
are
like it.
a little
Little
different.
RNG in there. Little RNG. All right. That's
Dude,
cool
I
too.
love
Because
it.
then, yeah, that definitely creates a replay value, right? Like, why keep playing the bosses? Well, you have a chance of getting a better drop, a more rare item, etc. So that's
Yeah,
I think that's a
absolutely.
very good draw to get people playing the game, which is, you're doing all of these things when it comes to the NFT side of this, right? An on-chain NFT. But in the meantime, you're also building a game, which is its own struggle, by the way, right? Just building a game that people want to play is not easy. And so you really have two separate businesses kind of clashing as you do this. And it's fascinating to hear how you're integrating certain elements of the RPG, and you're helping that magnify and elevate elements in the NFT space and vice versa. I think that's really neat.
That's it.
Yeah, yeah. I think for founders, a lot of founders and team members, as much as they like to hear that I have a voice and I'm a real human behind this, and whenever I address the community, I would use like a noun, the community, and that's kind of like unnamed, but at the same time, I want to say that these are real people as well. So for example, we have Yolanda, we have Block, and these are real people in the community. So it is I would say, uh, philosophy and motivation to ensure that, whichever is the outcome for the game, for any NFT project for the matter, if we start looking, at things, whether it's in the NFT space, the blockchain space, or even just in real life, we start looking at these nouns, the founders, the team, and the community as real people behind, you start having a much more human connection. And when you have this human connection, you then, build projects which you feel are true to the nature of real people. And I feel that's really important. So as we speak, I'll just give you an example. As we speak, unfortunately, we've entered the bear market, 1 or 2 days ago.
Yeah.
So we made a vote, in our Discord. We asked the community, hey guys, do you want to proceed with the game? If we proceed with the game, regardless of any mint status, whether it's completed or not, we will start the game, and then your rewards are essentially not affected because it's the same percentage of the total mint revenue.
Mhm.
Or the other option, which is, do you want to postpone, and we'll start at a healthier date. And the community thinks, let's take a break. A lot of these heartfelt wishes were like, I really want to play the game and I don't want to see the game fail. I've invested too much, in the wanting to play the game. So why don't we take a break? So that's one thing. And from our side, we hear these real humans, real people talking, and we say, well, what can we do now? Because when you have that connection that you're speaking to another person, not just like an avatar on Discord, you think deep and you want to, reach out and help people. So we say, okay, here's what we have planned. While we wait, for the market to feel better, we don't necessarily have to mint, during a bull period. We just have to get the bear sentiments over. What can we do for you, as a team? So we said, why don't we build like a prequel game, which is free for everyone to play? And that's actually what we're doing at the moment. So we're really fast on this. And any winners of, this mini game gets, an airdrop. I don't want to say too much, but you get an airdrop of something which you can eventually use in a real game. And I think when you see that there is this connection and that everyone, is really hard at work and there is all this gratefulness involved, you just really want to keep building and, make the community happy.
I love it. And you make such a great point there. And I don't, and I think that's honestly, from my opinion, the most special part about NFTs really is the community, right? And it just adds, you have this, what am I trying to say? It's just a more intimate connection with your community than regular companies. And like you said, Elijah, it drives you to be better and make further stuff in the future, which is it's just cool to hear a founder say that. Um, one quick question on the boss fights. Can you fight the boss as many times as possible, or how does that work?
Okay, so whenever you fight a boss, you have to submit a transaction. Now, I've done it myself in Rinkeby. The transaction is thankfully not too expensive. It's probably about $7 per boss fight. So we will not allow boss fights with similar items. So for example, if you used, Hero 1 and you equip item 4, then if you fought the boss with this combination before, we will not allow you to do that because there is no point. You will get it back exactly the same fight score. However, we do allow
Oh,
refights of bosses if you use different combinations of items. And you can fight the boss as many times as you want. And so long as you're the first few, players to defeat the boss, you get a chance to win, the boss drops. So the boss drops are limited as well. So they start at 1,000 boss drop for the first boss, and then they taper down, to 900, 800, 700, and so on.
Oh, so there's a time element as well. Interesting. And so does it always benefit you to have more items, or does it benefit, like, so for instance, if I have lower, or not anything lower, if I have 5 items but aren't relevant to the boss fight, uh am I gonna lose uh just because they're not relevant, or am I gonna still win because I have 5 items?
Okay. So from playing the game 7 times, there are things I realized. I will say this outright because most people wouldn't come to the conclusion without actually playing the game, and you have to play it a few times before you realize this. So as I played the game many times, I realized even as a hero, when you fight in boss fights, you fall into two camps. So the first camp are the hardcore overachievers. They would, equip 5 items. They would get the best item from OpenSea, and they would just try their best to get the top fight score. They're the analysts. They study, which rarity gives you, how much HP, and then how it stacks multiplicatively. So Cerebed, has done a fantastic job in writing the fight script. So it's really complicated. Transferring the fight script from Python into Solidity, we had to write it together with Basset. We ran simulations. We literally ran 10,000 simulations to get, kind of like a bell curve of, how many items you have to fight per boss with. So if you're like that analytical guy with all the very in-depth game question and you do the calculation, that's one way of playing, right? That's the
okay.
hardcore way of playing. The other way of playing is, well, I may not be able to own 5 items because, each item at mint is 0.05. I already have a hero, but I just don't have that many items, right? So is it
Ooh.
still worthwhile for me to play? So it is, because if you don't get the top fight score, right, then you can fight the boss nonetheless, but with different combinations of fight score. With different combinations of items. And some of these people are just playing it to claim the boss drops to sell it on OpenSea, or maybe to claim the boss drops so that, they would amass a
Ooh.
lot of boss drops for future fights. So that's the other way to think about it. So one of the mechanism is that if you belong to Camp One, right, and you just want the top fight score, you probably wouldn't want to burn your top items for just one boss drop, because the caveat is this: if you want to claim for the boss drop, you have to burn your items that you fought with. And we do this for a good
All of them?
Ooh.
reason.
All the items?
Any of the items, which means to say if you fought
Ooh.
with one item, you would have to burn one item. If you fought with 5 items, then good luck to you, sir. You have to burn all 5 of them. So this is where it gets really interesting, and we did this on purpose because we know that
Interesting.
items We know that
Dude.
items in season 1 cannot be used cross seasons. We know that only heroes can be used cross season. So I'm addressing this outright to the community that we know season 1 items eventually may not have, any form of utility. So what better way than to deplete the items completely in season 1 by introducing a burn mechanism for the boss drops.
Wow.
So yeah,
All
so
right.
by the end of season 1, we actually expect the total amount of items to be reduced by as much as 70%. So we'll see if that happens. And yeah, and if you're in the camp for, being the top fight score, you may not want to burn items. And if you're in a camp where you want to just sell boss drops, you would fight with the least amount of item to win the
Yeah.
boss fight.
Yeah, can
I
we
hope
call
that makes
that can
sense.
we call that camp the Leroy Jenkins camp? Because I feel like that's where that's coming from. And the second thing is all I ask is, you know, growing up as a kid, getting an NES game and opening up that cardboard box and seeing that little flimsy paper instruction book, I really feel like we need one of those for this because
Ah,
there is a lot of complexity going on here, and I just think that you have a unique space where if I could be looking at one of those old school instruction books, that
yeah.
would just make me giggle a little bit, man. That would be so amazing. You know what I'm talking about, Mikey?
Oh, bro, I was going straight to like the old strategy guides. You remember like playing Final
Right? Oh,
Fantasy
like dude,
7 with a strategy
Nintendo
guide?
Power, Nintendo Power.
Oh my gosh. Elijah, Sarabat, do you remember
Ooh,
those days where you're like grinding an RPG with a strategy guide?
Yeah, so I'm actually a Final Fantasy fan. So I started playing Final Fantasy since FF6. So FF6 we have, the protagonist who was Terra.
Yeah,
Yeah, and then right at the beginning of the game you get to sacrifice a stone. If
yeah,
you sacrifice a stone to, to change it into a sword, you get this Ultima sword. But
yeah.
if you don't do it, then you get the Ultima spell. I remember all those. And I'm not sure if you
yes.
realize, but in one of the spells, actually the best spell we have in Meta Magic is called Ultimatum. And Ultimatum is
Ah,
actually from, inspired by Final Fantasy.
I
I love
love
it.
it,
Dude, you're pulling out our heartstrings. We
dude.
our childhood, we're
Man.
playing Final Fantasy. In the US, 6 was 3, right? So Final Fantasy 3 on the Super Nintendo. Drinking Mountain Dew and eating Doritos, like a lot of
Oh my
both.
God. Yes.
And
Yes.
then we've played every Final Fantasy
Oh,
together other
dude.
than the last one, I think. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
awesome, and I love that you're inspired.
Insane.
What
And
other
chat,
RPGs are influenced meta and Magic? 'Cause you said
I
Final
was gonna say,
Fantasy, Diablo.
by, by the way, chat is all of a sudden they're chiming in. They like the Nintendo Power. By the way, Buzz Monkey, Super Nintendo still in the box. That's probably worth
Whoa,
something at this point.
that's got to
But
be worth some money. That's got to be worth some money. Any other games that influenced your thoughts, Elijah or Sarabat?
Yeah. So other than Final Fantasy, I actually played from Final Fantasy 6 to Final Fantasy 14. I think one of my few favorites were like FF7 and FF8.
Ah,
So
yes, yes.
yeah, yeah.
Dude,
So
8, you could boost with with the square button. You could just sit there and tap it so fast and boost your summons. Anyway, sorry, nerding out.
yeah,
Keep
yeah,
it
you're
flip.
right. We're doing the over limits, pressing them at the right time. Yeah, I totally remember that.
yes.
Okay, okay. So some of the other games that were inspiration to this would be those Mobile Legends type of fighting game like LOL and Pokemon. So Pokemon
Uh-huh.
is where you have the elemental ring, where you have the placements of the elements where the fire element is weaker to the water element, which is weaker to the earth element, and so on. So we got inspiration from that.
I
And
love it.
also the penetration resist, that affects magical damage, that sort of stuff, which is written by Sarah Bat. She got her inspiration from Dota.
Oh, okay, cool. I never got into Dota, but I know people loved it. You're just
Yeah, I play a lot of these games by
Yeah.
proxy. By proxy, I mean, I do a lot of walking for my cousins on Final Fantasy. I never get to fight, but I get to watch them fight, and they let me. Um,
I love that.
in Dota, for the viewers who play Dota, you would know that you need a courier, you need someone who's a support, and that's me because I respawn quickly, and that tells you something. And I'm in charge of spending money on courier, so I play a lot by proxy.
Yeah.
I get, in that sense, I get an overview of the game. A lot of the game mechanics are built upon these games that I play in proxy.
Right. No, I love it. I love that you use the word proxy. What was the other game that I was thinking of? Ah, not Final Fantasy, but I
Is it an
forget.
RPG?
Oh,
Was it from
StarCraft. Did
Destiny?
you get into StarCraft? Because,
No,
StarCraft
my
is,
cousins didn't play StarCraft.
That's real
My
time
cousins never played.
strategy. That's real time
well,
strategy.
Dota's real-time strategy. That's why I
Yeah.
asked. But yeah, StarCraft was another real-time strategy game that you could have played by proxies. That was why I asked. Um,
Mm,
I'm gonna
I'll
I'm
get my cousins to play it.
I'm gonna throw I'm gonna throw a couple old school RPGs. Super Mario RPG on the Super Nintendo. Fantastic game. And Chrono Trigger. Do you remember Chrono Trigger?
yeah, I play Chrono Trigger. My goodness.
Ah.
Wow. Mikey, I think we're revealing our age too much.
Hey man, we're
Yeah,
called Midlife Crisis for a reason.
I know.
Ah,
yeah,
that's
yeah. I
awesome. Go ahead.
really,
Awesome.
really nostalgic days. Chrono Trigger, Chrono Cross, and so on.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And hey, you're right. Here, I'll throw another one out. Secret of Mana. You remember that one? Ah,
No, didn't play Secret of Mana. Was it good?
Secret of Mana is so good. Breath of
Mana,
Fire, Breath of Fire, Breath of the Wild, Breath of Fire. I think that was
Seven
another one.
Saga.
Seventh Saga. Oh my gosh, there's so
Mhm.
many good ones.
Yeah.
All right, so we have some, believe it or not, we've been talking for almost an hour and 45 minutes. We told you we wouldn't disappoint. Um, so we have a couple community questions, but you did such an amazing job kind of explaining the game and everything going on. Um, I don't think there's a ton of questions, but we'll go through one or two of them, and then in the meantime, I'll actually run the giveaway. So Matt, do you want to ask the question while I set up the giveaway? And with all of this
Sure.
being said, Elijah and Sarabat were so kind for our community. We're doing a free airdrop for the community of an item and a hero if you're here right now because we love you all, Midlife Crisis, and we love you all, Meta and Magic community as well. So we appreciate it, man. This is awesome. Go ahead,
Heck
Maddie.
yeah. Sure. So one of the questions from the community is the game going to be utilized through an app specifically, or is it just going to be browser based? And is it token gated?
Okay. So to connect to the game, you would need MetaMask. So if you want to use your browser to play the game, you would have to use the MetaMask browser.
Okay.
For just the full experience of the game, we actually recommend using, your desktop browser instead of your mobile browser. There's
Okay.
going to be music in the game, so we have like 8-bit music to sort of bring back the nostalgic feels.
Ah,
And
yes.
Yes.
yeah,
MIDI files.
yeah, some MIDI files. When you listen to it, you will get the Final Fantasy vibes. I'm pretty sure of
Okay.
that.
Oh, I'm
I'm
so
loving it. I'm
excited.
loving it. Okay, good deal. So best way to do it is browser through MetaMask on the PC, like on your desktop. Okay, good to go. And I asked, is it token gated? Yeah, is it token gated?
Could you explain on that? What does token gated mean?
That is a great question. I'm just reading what they said there.
What do you mean by token
Let's
gated,
see.
people?
Yeah, what do you mean by token gated, folks? I don't know what that means. So we'll do
I'm
that.
assuming that you would have to spend some type of token to play, But my assumption
So,
is every time
mhm,
you hook up to fight a boss, you're paying a gas fee, right? Is that how it works?
that's right. So the only thing you have to pay is the gas for the transaction. Other than that, if you own a hero, even if you don't own any items, just with the hero itself, you can actually participate in a fight.
Okay, good deal. Good deal. Yeah, everything else we've actually answered just organically through our conversation. So it ended up we just been saving them and we ended up getting all those answered. So that
Awesome.
works out. That was the only main one that we hadn't really addressed specifically. And now that's good to know. So it's going to be browser based. Now, is there any plans in the future to maybe implement or just like maybe depending on success, implement maybe an app or something like that?
Uh, for an app, I don't have any experience or actually tried, playing a game which is connected to, the blockchain via an app. I think majority of the apps out there that we see are just, for checking of market prices, what is the price of Ethereum and what is the price of this and that. But essentially, if MetaMagic is going to be a franchise after the success of all 3 seasons, then it is possible that, we could grow into the size of something like Axie Infinity. And once that happens, then you were right. It's probably better to have our own in-game platform like an application. Having
Okay.
said this, or actually during the development of the game since last year in December until now, which is 6 months, we've actually received a few of these VC invites along with capital companies who actually wants to invest in MetaMagic. So we're still in talks with them
That's
because
cool.
as much as we want to grow this into something much bigger than us, we also want to reward the community for who they are and these people who are in the early days. So we would very much like to bootstrap this until we grow to a point where we say, okay, we see the validation, into people who actually like the game, and that point, if indeed we still, would like to receive, VC fundings and to grow this into something else, that could be bullish for all of us.
I love it. And so a
Yeah.
couple final questions follow up. I know there's so the real mint was supposed to be what the first mint was supposed to be a week and a half ago. I know there was the land drop and a lot of people delayed. And I know there was some repricing of the items because, and this is awesome. It sounded like you listened to your community and said, hey, some of if I need 5 items to fight a boss, this is a lot of money. So can you talk about that experience and where we're at now for the project and what people can expect?
Sure, I'll talk about it. So I think we launched in the unfortunate time where it was right after liquidity was sucked up by the BAYC land sale. And then coupled with the fact that, a lot of people were visiting our website and, it caused the website to crash. So that's sort of, slowed the momentum for the mint, which was our trigger for, pausing the mint because we don't think, it's justifiable for a project. So actually, having said this, I would just say it outright now. We upgraded project the website since with these Kubernetes classes and nodes to do load balancing for the website. But quite interestingly, and to any developers out there, we actually found out what was causing the website to crash. And believe it or not, it's not due to load balancing on the website, the instance not being able to handle, but it's actually due to, and moment of truth, web3.py, which is the Python library for fetching, these MetaMask transactions. So I would say if you're building any project right now, because we were pretty sophisticated. We built the whole architecture on Django, with containerization running, instances and so on. So for a Web2 project, I think that's fine. But for Web3 project, we don't recommend, using web3.py. That was actually what caused the website to crash. And so since then we fixed that. We've
Interesting.
changed it to, yeah, to another front end framework to fetch the data.
Interesting. That is very interesting. So I saw also, and then after this we have our last question that we always ask and we can part ways. And by the way, Silos, congratulations.
Ooh,
You
look
are
at
the winner
that.
of the free airdrop. You just heard how valuable a hero is. Well, you got a freaking hero, dude. You should be real excited. Silos. And just so you know, Elijah and Sarabat, Silos is actually one of our very avid followers. What just like you, we've built a very close-knit community here that all loves each other and we all help each other out navigate the space together. So it's really cool that he was able to win that. Um, the last question was, I did see the announcement about even thinking about delaying the mint just a tad bit more. What are the thoughts around that? And it seemed like people were in favor of doing that. So what are the thoughts here, and what can the people expect next?
Okay, so I just want to make this clear. I think in terms of the bare sentiments that we have now, which is why we allowed the community to vote, because you always think that the community voice is the most important, not the team's voice, not an individual person's voice, but the community
Yeah.
voice. Eventually, the people who will play the game. The community thinks that I think the votes are right now at a ratio of about 1:6. So for every one person who says we should mint tonight, six other people think, let's just pause it, wait for a better market sentiment. And then, they don't want to see the project to be wasted. So they are too hyped up, so to speak, or too involved in the project mentally to let this, go to waste. So the remaining six of them say, why don't we just wait a while? And I agree with this. So we also need to know that for any postponement for that matter, the community's involvement and what's fresh in their mind is important as well. So any postponement for this, we will not have it as too long. So we won't say, we're just going to leave you hanging, in Discord, and then we're just going to come back when the bull market comes back, because who knows when the bull market will come back?
For
Maybe
sure.
yeah, so maybe we're entering like a crypto winter. And if it's a crypto winter, we're looking at least one to 1.5 years. And by 1 to 1.5 years, we won't even know, if half of the community members were still in Math and Magic, right?
Right.
So we have to weigh that in response. So sometimes we, as founders of the project, or we see all of these happening, and we try to gel the community together, and then we launch at a time, which is right. So having said this, the postponement of the launch, the rescheduling of the new mint dates will likely not be that far along. We were thinking in terms of maybe a week or two, so that if we make the announcement, it is immediate. Actually, as of today, as of this morning, ETH has already appreciated. Not much, but it's bullish this morning. So I think ETH has risen by 5% as far as I checked.
Uh-huh.
So
Uh-huh.
what we want to do here is we want to ensure that the shock value from the recent drop has at least faded, right? And we think that's going to take at least, maybe a couple of days, maybe a week. And when everybody accepts that, okay, we're at a price range for ETH at maybe 2,400 or so, everyone is, assured, okay, it's only up from here, or, it's just going to crash further. Then we say, let's do it. Let's do the mint. You guys can play the game. One ETH is one ETH, right? And good news, we have actually 30% of the price tokens in USDC and USDT. So that's actually worth more than it was before. And we resume. A lot of people, for example, we have Purple Rain. I'm not sure if she's here in the community. We have people like Block. These are just diehard fans. They're in the Coliseum. Just raving every morning and every night. Going good morning, good night to all the community members. And these people actually don't really care whether we mint out, because they just want to play the game.
Right.
And these are strong people. So we want to ensure that the community itself has that amount of enthusiasm, and we will relaunch the mint likely in a week or two, so that this stays true.
I love it. And I think that's just honestly a great way to end. You have you have done an amazing job on um, doing things the right way, doing things that you believe in. I love that you're a maker. And then finally, the fact that you're working with your community, had to pause it, still have all of this admiration for your project and a strong community supporting you and still an active chat. Not a lot of projects can do that. And I think it's a testament to the fact that you all are good people and you're trying to do it the right way and you're listening to your community. And if you continue to do that, I think you're going to be fantastic. And I myself can't wait to fight my first dragon boss or whatever that boss may look like. Our last question that we like to ask is, and Sarabat, I know we had a lot of questions for Elijah, but both of you, how do you think this went? Did you enjoy it? Do you have any questions for us?
Sarah, do you want to take that this?
Sorry, my connection was. Could you repeat?
So I would love for both of you to answer. So we'll start with you, Sarah Bat. How do you think the whole conversation went? Did you enjoy it? And do you have any questions for Maddie or I?
Oh, right. It's been great. It's very awesome. This is actually the first AMA that I joined, and I enjoyed it thoroughly. I just have
Awesome.
one tip to leave for you and your viewers. You can get full magical immunity, right? So read the walkthrough, and I think you would be able to get some insights on that. So you don't
Ooh,
need too many items. You need the right item.
holy shit, people. That's major
All
alpha.
right.
Full
I like
magical
it.
immunity with maybe the right item. That's badass. And then how about for you, Elijah? Same question to you. How do you think it went? Any questions for us?
Yeah, I really enjoyed my time here in Midlife Crisis. I think it was the only AME that did, who fully appreciated, the depth of the games that we played. So all the way from Final Fantasy VI to Chrono Cross, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think amongst the AMAs that I did, maybe, they may not have, even heard of Chrono Cross. So I felt really, in line with you guys. We've come a long way, as kids playing, these 16-bit or 32-bit RPG games, all the way to, Pokemon on Game Boy, and till, with these fantastic graphics in Final Fantasy 14, and finally going into the blockchain space, playing, like on-chain games. I think we've come a long way as and I'm just so excited to get it started. And finally, I would say it's my game, my first game, and I hope, as much as all of you are, whether you're into on-chain games or not into on-chain games, or you're just here for the nostalgic value of it, I hope you will enjoy this game. Yeah, that's my take. That's my heartfelt statement.
Nice. That's wonderful. That's
Love it.
wonderful.
Maddie, closing comments for our esteemed guest.
Yeah. So first of all, this has been a lot of fun. Obviously, Mike and I are gamers, so this is just, round peg, round hole. And not only gamers, but old school RPG gamers. And so, like you said, there aren't many people that are going to get some of those references. What excites me about this is, and this is one of those, I'm really glad that I was born when I was, because I got to experience such an amazing transition in video games and storytelling. However, that being said, there is something about the idea that there is someone young now who gets to experience a whole new wave of these games in an NFT world, right? I mean, we talked about playing Diablo back in the day, but it's like Mike and I distinctly remember learning about NFTs and thinking, what's going to happen when a game on the level of a Diablo or an Elder Scrolls or something like that, what's going to happen when they truly integrate NFTs into the item and have their own inboard, they have their onboard marketplaces. But what's going to happen when each one of those items is something you can own? And it was just kind of that concept was there. And what I see happening is these are the first stages of us getting there, and you guys are the ones that are blazing that trail. and it seems like you're doing it in a very authentic way. And what I mean by that is the old school kind of Blizzard vibes. And I'm not talking about Activision Blizzard. I'm talking about, the Blizzard that came on the map by listening to the community and making really great games that were fun to play. That was the philosophy. They led with the tech, and they made sure they interacted with their community and did what they wanted, and they blew up, right? They made amazing games that we all remember. And so it just seems like you're following that path, and it's just going to be really a pleasure to see how everything works out for you.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, and I would just add, I was really impacted quickly, Elijah, by just how responsive you were, and this was right before, not too long before Mint. Just super gracious. I know you get hit by a bajillion people, and I don't know what it was that that made you kind of respond and reach out, because I went into your Discord and immediately saw that you all were building something special. I liked that you made it, you intentionally made it Final Fantasy grindy with the exclamation point magic. Like I knew exactly what you were doing it. You didn't even need to tell me. And so I got that nostalgia just by going into your Discord, and I like to see people doing unique things in this space. And then the fact that you got back so quickly and so kindly, agreed to come on the show and, have given us things to give away to our community, I just can't thank you enough. And I can't wait to play the game. And you know that you now have a very hardcore, avid NFT community, that has your back as well. So just thank you so much, man. And thank you to Sarah
Yeah.
Bat.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure is ours. Pleasure is ours.
Awesome. Well, you all have a great night. Midlife Crisis will be back on Thursday with Big Town Chef Gino DeCampo. Apparently, he's a celebrity chef, and they're making a cooking metaverse where you can make some money. We all love you. Thanks for sticking around.